I need the slide advanced pictures, don't I? I'm just going to do this from here. Actually, never mind. So, just want to give everyone a little bit of an update. If you hear last year, we briefly discussed our new area of work, which was energy efficiency work. At that time, we had a lot of things we didn't know, but we had a lot of money. So, this started out in 2001. We had submitted a proposal to the Governor Northam based on some information from community housing partners and our other experts, saying we would love to do more weatherization. We would love to do residential, more commercial, more building automation. We would love to do more. We don't have to keep it. And so we realized very quickly this was a huge problem for the entire industry. That proposal did not get accepted into the government's budget at that time, but it really was eye-opening for us as an organization, especially a member-based organization. I wanted to sort of how can we help? And this was, here's your answer. So we held listening sessions to really get a feel of needs across different sectors. In winter of 2021, and that went through winter 2021 and 2022, the bipartisan infrastructure law passed. So that was about the last we heard from us. We knew the bipartisan infrastructure law passed, and that there was going to be money from the Inflation Reduction Act, and there was going to be all of this funding. So we convened small group members to design and refine our proposal, which we sent to the Virginia Department of Energy in March of 2022. We sent 2 proposals that would utilize building bipartisan infrastructure law funding that would go to the state energy office. Then, of course, the Inflation Reduction passed, and we were hearing about $200 million for contractor training and $9 billion for residential energy, the 30% tax credits, and money is coming out like a fire hose, and you all this demand and all this opportunity, and what are you going to do with it? You have to strike the top, and we like I am. At that point, we said, it's time for outreach, it's time for research, and it's time for meetings. We need to talk to people who are already on the ground, who are already doing work, because there are literally thousands of workforce development entities of some form or another in the state of Virginia. Some of them train, but they don't place. Some of them focus on company culture and diversity, equity, and inclusion. Some of them want to hire 17 people, but they can't find them. So we needed to think big picture and think about how this was going to connect. So in spring and summer of this year, we were asked to participate in Virginia Energy's workforce gap analysis, the advisory committee and the stakeholders. We presented to a huge array of organizations that are already doing some or most of this work. Heard from Department of Labor and Industry, from the Virginia Community College system, from Bill, and lots of different people who are invested in making this money, both the contractor training grant program and the home energy rebate program, making that money go as far as it can, making it work, and making it not just a one-time flash in the pan like we learned from the RA. That money is not in. It's not going to last until we heat death of the first. We need to make sure that whatever we put in place lasts beyond the temporary. So we received the guidelines for federal funds in July of 2023. The opportunities are endless. The barriers are boundless. And now it is time for us to go and figure out what the actual concrete steps for workforce development will be. So there's a right way and there's a wrong way. And as you can see from our wonderful anti-hero Loki coming in and saying, you're saying here is the wrong way. That's not what we want to do. We want to come in and talk to people who are partner with existing entities, meet with community stakeholders, listen. What's less helpful than someone coming in saying and then ignoring all of your needs. We don't want to do that. So we want to listen to community action agencies, to workforce development boards, to colleges, to anyone who will talk. We're going to connect opportunities with employees, provide training for existing jobs. This is a big piece of the guidance for the home energy rebates, is making sure that these jobs to install these wonderful heat pumps and upgrade this insulation of these electric panels and make these retrofits, that those jobs are, the training exists to get people into those soon. We want to make sure there's a fair and equitable deployment, so we're focusing our work on historically economically disadvantaged communities, and make sure that we include additional wraparound services in our plan. There are a lot of barriers to getting people to work. Sometimes that's transportation, sometimes that's childcare, sometimes that's math and reading skills. So we need to make sure that there are opportunities to meet people where they are and set them up for success. So you've probably seen this graphic before if you've talked to me in the last 2 years, but this is the overall look at the workforce development, the energy efficiency workforce initiative we put together. We want a holistic workforce pipeline that will recruit, train, place, and retain employees in high-paying, lasting jobs with opportunities for advancement. So we have selected Hampton Roads as our initial pilot program area with the intention to utilize federal funding as it becomes available to scale ultimately statewide. This would be partnered with a number of other entities and different funding sources. We're not going to sell by ourselves, and would be involved with the Virginia Department of Energy's state-based energy efficiency contractor program that they are designing. So with all of that, we have our wonderful speakers today. We're going to speak to one piece of this pipeline. Dr. Laura Hanson is the Interim Director of Workforce Solutions at Tidewater Community College. Phil Holmes, Director of Community Housing Partners Training Center. Michael Flanagan is with Quick Base Sequo. He's the Executive Vice President. And Crystal McCombs is the Director of the Workforce Development Program at the DC Sustainable Energy Utility. So everyone give them a round of applause. Laura, you don't have any slides, so you get to just talk. I get to do. I'm very good at that. I hit the button on.
Thank you all. Can you hear me? No. Thank you all for inviting me here today.
Yeah, there you go.
Don't have to use much of that very often. Well, once again, thank you for inviting me here today. I am very excited to be part of this project because I can see that you're already well on track to doing exactly what you need to do. So I'm going to get into the nuances that some of what Rebecca said. Talk about recruiting. You guys have already done a gap analysis, so that's the starting point. You know where you have needs. What we don't know in the community college system and probably in most of the education systems around here is what that means. The biggest challenge we face in course development is articulating what the job is to a community who's never heard of that job before. And so we're talking about jobs in clean energy. That doesn't mean anything to anybody except maybe wind energy. They recognize that education out there, but all of these other really valuable jobs in the sector are not well defined. So students don't know how to get into the job, how much training it's going to take, what the pay looks like, what the career path looks like. So the very first step in developing a recruitment plan is looking at the jobs that your company has and defining it and saying, oh, these are bare minimum requirements. Maybe just certification. Maybe you can take somebody who's never worked in the industry before and you can train them over the course of 80 to 100 hours and give them all the skills they need to perform the task that you have. And it's going to be a task that's sustainable, that you want one person concentrating on, and they don't need to learn everything else around them. Or it may be have an HVAC technician needs to learn a special skill related to energy. And so you're upskilling that individual, and he sees that as an opportunity to advance on the pathway. So as employers, you need to be looking at that employee saying, how are we going to invest? Are you going to pay for the training? Are you just going to send them to school and say, you've got to do this if you want to keep your job, or are you only going to hire people who already have the skill? So defining that's going to be an important step for you, and mapping out all of the jobs. Once you have mapped out what needs are, and you can do that in collaboration with your community college, with your workforce council, your four-year colleges, depending on the level of skill. So we know we can, I'm going to use HVAC technician. That will better than some of the others, but we can take an HVAC technician at a community college and they can get a 2-year certificate. So they're going to have 60 hours of education that prepare them for work in the industry. Or you can send them to a workforce training program where they spend months doing nothing but HVAC training, and they'll develop enough skills to be valuable to you on day one of the course. So you have a lot of choices, and you really need to step back and say, what is going to meet my immediate? And then you need to think about who you're recruiting. So talked a lot about what your needs are, but one of the challenges that we find in workforce is that we make the requirements too difficult for someone to get access. I was in a meeting the other day with some folks talking about the nursing industry and how nurses are wasting a lot of time on administrative tasks that somebody who is not a nurse could do in partnership with that nurse, and the nurse's skills could be used doing nursing. The same thing would apply to this industry. Find out what skills and break it down into several levels so that your highly skilled technician focus on highly skilled things, and your entry-level person can focus on entry-level skills. And that takes coordination, and it probably takes more staff. But if you find a pathway in for that entry-level person, number one, you have the potential to create some really strong loyalty. So if you're investing in someone from day one, they're excited about being engaged with you. If they're staying on the job through that initial training, if you do a pre-hire program where you get to hiring them if they successfully complete training, they're going to be excited about that option. They're going to stay with you. And as they develop their skills on the job, they're going to stay with you. That retention piece is going to happen because you've invested in them. But we talk about disadvantaged communities. That's our untapped labor market right now. Folks who have not entered the labor pool because they don't have any skills and they don't think they can get the skills. So we might have some barriers in math and language that we've got to overcome. And the community colleges are equipped to do that. Your workforce councils are equipped to do that. There's a lot of partners in the region that can solve that problem for you, but it's about designing the whole process and recognizing that some people are going to come to you not having the best employee skills. I mean, that attendance challenge that everyone faces. I worked with an employer who they docked you, not financially docked you. There was like a blip on your record every time you were late for work. And instead of talking to the employee to find out why they're late for work, and after so many blips, you're fired. And the reality is we can't afford to fire somebody right now unless they're terrible, because you need somebody who is capable of doing the job. So instead of firing someone because they're not performing on all levels, you need to take a step back and look at them and go, what can we do to solve this continuous problem? The person may be late every day because the bus that they have to take to get to your job drops them off late, and they can't control that. One day they'll have a job, they'll have a car because they've worked with you for a long time, but get to the bottom of the problem instead of just making an arbitrary choice about why they should be there or why they should not be there. And build your recruitment plan with your local partners, because you don't want to duplicate things. We've already got those. When we talk about wraparound services, the workforce council in each region has financial resources to help pay for childcare and transportation and tuition. The Commonwealth of Virginia loves workforce development, and they are pouring money into it. But what they're looking for is industry recognized credentials. It's not just random money that comes in and says, okay, yeah, you can take an English class. They want you to take a class that's going to lead to an industry recognized credential that will put you on a career pathway for good wages and a long-term career. So think about your jobs that way. Industry recognized credentials. We can get state funding to pay for the tuition of that student to go to school if we can tie it to employment with something that everybody across the board can agree on and says, yes, if they have this credential, they can get this job, and kind of micro those. Don't just start with the big, 2-year degree. That's not going to solve the problem at the entry level. Those are the folks you want coming in your door so that they can advance. But so industry recognized credentials, really important thing. You've got some new credentials. So there's not a lot of labor market data out there. If you know you want somebody to have skill and you're advertising, put it in your job description right now, because the more job descriptions that say, I need this credential to have this job, the easier it is for us in workforce to ask for tuition assistance to pay for that credential training. So keep that in mind. When you're upskilling your employees, think about the fact that there are incumbent worker training funds. So you as a company can work with your local workforce council and get funding to send them to the local community college or other approved colleges. And they'll help offset the cost of the tuition that you're paying on behalf of your employees. So there's a lot of money out there to pay for it. Partner with local folks to apply for these grants. There are so many DOE grants right now, EOL grants that are going to go, there's room for us to get money here. We do a really good job in this region of collaboration to get funding to pay for programs that can handle some of these extra services, can pay for tuition, can help pay for on-the-job training. And that's, that try before you buy concept, that's really valuable. And you can have, number one, the employee come in and say, really, this is not a good fit for me. And you don't waste any money onboarding. Or they come in and they're like, I love this company, I want to be here forever. You get first dibs on them because you invested in partnering with that training program. Those are those are really the key elements. Define your jobs, start putting it in your job descriptions right now. Work with your local college to find out who's teaching it and what timelines we can teach it on. And then really think about who you're looking for. Because if you can define what you're looking for in an employee, then we as community college can build a training program that will prepare them to be what you're looking for. But it's very, very important. We can go, get a standardized book. But if there's an industry recognized credential that's associated, terrific. NC3 is a great place to look at for credentials. NCCER has resources. I'm sure there's a number of other agencies that do the same thing, but we work with those already, and that will let you validate the skills that they're gaining when they're in training. So connect the credentials to your jobs.
So, Phil, when do you want to play the first one?
Yeah, let's do it first.
Yeah.
I'll just say who I am, then we'll hit play. Deal?
Yeah.
What else did you want from me? Just an intro?
Yeah, just the intro.
Okay. So good afternoon. My name is Phil Hall. I'm the director of CHP Energy Solutions training centers. I have to say centers now because we now have 2 of them. One is located in Christiansburg, Virginia, and our second one is in Baltimore, Maryland. We just opened up this past summer. So we primarily focus on training incumbent workers that work in the weatherization fields, that work for weatherization agencies or community action agencies. They're coming to us to get the skills needed to then go back and do their job. So that's primarily where our focus is actually in the weatherization, training contractors and staff that work at agencies. And I just want to show you a quick video in case you've never been to our facility or you're like, what's a weatherization training center? This is what we do.
That works too.
So we have to be ready for house and the local lab. The main facility has the main training labs, innovative class used to be practical students. Among these are in I'm pleased now to students leading the nation learning environment. All of our students are academies to ensure that they are students ready to practice the day of learn. We love sports, iPad, and other computer technologies to control our sound and apps. This seems like the region of technology we learn the application energy both while the technology also. Everything that is very good as online learning solutions for our students. Our developers supposed to give us some access to all before the time. We provide our experience trainings and mix with fellow leading strategies that show our members the right way to do our organization work. And last, the third amount is relevant to the English when it's better not to in addition to our recognition, we also offer multi-family energy audit. County multi-family energy audits includes many of our best, most experienced strengths, learning abilities, now to prevent cost savings more and more business. And we were not cheating the alignment shots, within the trends, which we continue to run applications, and for engagement, and advance whether this is energy auditors, leaders, and a general public. And then switch on our customers serving, giving the student trainer, dedicated staff, and innovative technology come together to use the best words and acceptance. Community college programs energy solutions, trusted local performance.
So it's a little dated video. If you look around the room, you may see some of the actors, you know, at your table. You know, the shirts have changed. We've lost a little bit of hair. But overall, that's us in a nutshell. I mean, we do provide training locally, regionally, nationally. 50% of our courses are hands-on. This is a hands-on industry. So we don't spend a lot of time in front of PowerPoints. We get out in the labs and, you know, practice and play with the tools and the equipment that they're going to be using in their jobs. So it's very much a hands-on facility. You're welcome. Every one of you have an open invitation coming through Christiansburg, Virginia, and you're like, hey, there's a training center nearby here. Just Google it, stop by, we'll give you a tour.
You Phil? Mike, you're not nervous?
Like Flanagan with a quick AC quote. Happy to be here. And I'd like to tag on to what you were talking about earlier with the training programs in the community colleges and the industry recognized certifications. So from the hiring perspective and contractor perspective, one of the things I would speak to a little bit of what you're saying is the vast majority, over 90% of your HVAC contractors in America will never do more than $2 million in business in 1 year. And the reason I mention that is these are small companies. Their ability to drive the training path and career of new employees doesn't exist as much as it would in, say, a healthcare environment where, you know, the nurse training programs are so robust. There's great capacity there. It's a very different landscape. A lot of the industry recognized certifications are segmented and don't speak to what the contractors need. So what we see a lot is people coming out of a trade school, whether it's a high school or community college or profit, and they've got this great EPA 608 card, right? Which I don't know how many people in here have it, but it's a history test, folks. It's dates and weights, and it does not provide you with the skills you need. What the industry needs desperately are candidates that have week one, month one, basic skills that are something that the contractor can put to use profitably. The good news is they aren't huge skills and they can be taught in reasonable amounts of time. I think one of the big keys to that is a hybrid training model. As great as CHP's research and training facility is, and I've been there many times, we put several employees through their classes and it's great, but it's in a classroom. And as much as they try to make that classroom real world, it's just not. The attic's not 140 degrees. There's not rock wool. There's not knob and tube. There's not watch out for that old CPVC. Don't even look at it hard. And the need would be, to me, the ideal situation would be somebody that's had that hands-on and that classroom time. Because what we do, whether it's HVAC, electrical, plumbing, I don't know the solar and wind world well, but so much of it is you just have to see a number of things a number of times. You know, there's 5 ways to do it right and 100 ways to do it wrong. And those 100 ways to do it wrong look really attractive until you've seen enough things. And the classroom just doesn't, that just doesn't exist there, because you can't put 100 different systems in your classroom.
It's fun ways.
Right. So speaking back to the credentials, I think there's a big gap, particularly in the HVAC field, for some more or new industry recognized credentials that contractors agree, hey, if you provide me a candidate that has checked this box, I'm reasonably confident that I can be somewhat profitable with him early. The ability for most of your small contractors to run a number of people through to decide whether this trade is good for me or not just doesn't exist. They just don't have the bandwidth to take that risk on, whereas, you know, larger companies in healthcare do. So it'd be my couple of points on that. Now, I know your program is killing it, so I want to hear more about that.
Well, let me first say thank you, Rebecca, and thank you to the VAEEC. My name is Crystal McDonald. I'm from the DC Sustainable Energy Utility in Washington, DC. We are an energy efficiency utility with our parent company being VAEEC. We've been doing business in the district since about 2011. We are on a performance-based contract with the DC Department of Energy and Environment. And we are funded by the Sustainable Energy Trust Fund, that little surcharge that every energy user pays on their Pepco or Washington Gas bill. And so we run several different programs. And I forgot all about the slides. Thank you, Rebecca. If we could get to our benchmark sheet right there. There we go. Yep. These are our benchmarks for the performance based contract that we own, the DOEE. Of course, there's energy savings, combined energy savings, GHG savings, low income and affordable housing targets. We have a combined solar and energy efficiency target, and we also have the deep energy retrofit target, which is where we are going into fields and trying to achieve up to 30%. We haven't gotten here yet, but we're working on it. But primary focus for today are the green jobs and the local economic department targets that we have in the district. So we run 2 workforce development, or I like to just broadly categorize them as capacity building. The workforce development project program that we run without externs, that is focused on the individuals. We will take underemployed, unemployed, everybody, every district resident who is willing to go through our program and include them in a 5-month process. The process is where it includes screen external candidates. We call them externs. We treat them like interns, but they are externally placed with our community partners and our certified business enterprises or small businesses in the district, along with some of our other larger commercial customers. We screen candidates. Our partners get to screen candidates that they would like to bring on. And basically, we send them through a 5-month program for both technical and professional development. The game changer here is DCSU pays a livable wage based on DC wages. And but the mentor or host, they get to have the extern for 5 months to train them and develop them with the intent to hire at the end of that 5-month period. So you're talking about hands-on training, they get hands-on training. And we place positions based on what the mentor's needs are. We have placed solar installers, electrical assistants, program managers, analysts. We've even placed graphic artists who work with some of our commercial customers on the energy efficiency side. We've had administrators who need to do the paperwork to file the utilities, to get the work done, to get the job done. So across the spectrum, and we've accepted everybody across the spectrum, including returning citizens. And then there are folks who are out there for a second career and everybody in between. On the contracting side, a few years ago, we launched a Train Green program. This is where legislation calls for us to build capacity among our small and local businesses and certified business enterprises to build capacity to do the work that is necessary per the legislation in the district. We have very aggressive clean energy policies and lots of demand for folks to fill those positions and to get the work done. And so with the CBE based program, we call it Train Green. It's a long legislative term, Sustainable Energy Infrastructure Capacity Pipeline Building Program. So we've shortened it to Train Green. And so we focused on the contracting community, and we offered courses at no cost to them, leading to, we pay for the exams and the certification of nationally recognized certifications. And I'll go into each of those a little bit more. And so with our workforce development and the model that we're using, the DCSU, we will pay the livable wage. We will identify mentors and partners who can help us with placing them in on-the-job training. We also surround them with wraparound services. We rely on our community-based organizations to help us do that, because obviously we can't fulfill everything that the individual needs, because there are very high touch needs, everything from transportation to housing to daycare, right? So we partner with our CBOs on that front. And then of course, the mentors help us on the technical side, along with our own engineering in-house staff to introduce them to green careers. And again, we want to just introduce them to a career and not just a job. And with that, we've had a lot of success. You see the numbers there. We over the years, since about 2016, we've graduated over 200 externs, and then our placement rate is sort of a misnomer, but we've tried to come up with a new term if you want to compare job placement, right? But we've worked with some of our staffing agencies to help us with a better definition, but basically it just reflects the number of externs who've been permanently placed and hired by their mentor. And we're at 85% or above with our placement rate. You see that dip in the middle, that was due to COVID closures in the district. And again, we're focusing on this district residents along in the DC footprint. Next slide, please. What am I talking about? Oh, the Train Green, the Train Green program, and that one is focused on the contracting community, because we do need the contractors to hire the mentors, but we also need the contractors to do the work that policies require. For example, we have a building energy performance standard in the district where all commercial buildings above 50,000 square feet, that would still include all buildings above 10,000 square feet, to reach a certain median energy score for their building energy performance, where there's lots of work that needs to happen on lighting, HVAC, solar, and other building systems. And the small businesses, contractors, they need to be able to compete and be more marketable. And they need the certifications, because the legislation calls for certifications to get things done, like the energy audit. You have to have a CEM or a few other credentials to even perform the ASHRAE level 2 energy audit. So there are things like that that are happening, and we are working with our contracting community to make sure they have the opportunity to compete and be successful in this market. So policy with the funding behind it drives our success rate in both of these programs. And you will see the educational pathways that the contractor community can determine. This is all self-determined. They can select whether or not, there are a few courses that may have some prerequisites, but you can start at the beginning, intermediate, or advanced levels. What we'd like to offer to all of our contractors and externs is, of course, it's called Green Buildings 101, so that they understand what we're doing and why we're doing it. So we do offer those introductory courses, and then they can dive right into one of the educational pathways. And you can see that there. It includes solar, HVAC, building operations and maintenance, and of course, sustainability and health. And we have over 30 courses for the contracting community, which, by the way, the workforce development externs, they are able to participate in those courses as well as a district resident. So training is a huge component on the extern side. You know, we start with the basics. They get the Green Buildings 101, they get OSHA 10, OSHA 30, and then we give them the opportunity to sit for lead GA exams and so on. And then they could get additional training and credentials on the train green side. So we are focusing on the individual and the contractor in the green economy happening in the district and in our region. Just wanted to share a quick story with you. This story is about Joshua. Joshua was a rideshare driver. One of our DCSU staff members was in his vehicle. She was the rider. She talked about, you know, what we do at DCSU, and learned that Joshua had a little bit of HVAC training in his background. Well, he pursued the workforce development program and is now employed with a local hospital. So those are kinds of life transforming opportunities that happen both of our programs. And yeah, they're our crown jewel, I would say, in the life of the DCSU. So we do have a model that we think is successful, replicable, and scalable. And as long as you have like policy and funding behind it, you can do great things. Thank you.
All right, so now I'm gonna ask a couple of questions to all of our panelists, and you guys get to sound off on what your thoughts are about the workforce and opportunities. So we talked a lot about what each piece of the puzzle looks like, your recruitment, training, placement, retention. But what's the largest barrier, one single largest barrier you see to developing the energy efficiency workforce? I'll go at once.
Gotta pick one.
I mean, largest. Here you go.
Well, this is very broad, like awareness for us. Awareness of the opportunities, have any more jobs, awareness of how it connects to clean energy, and this is how to access.
I like that.
Yeah, I'm gonna tack on to that because we're a large company, about 400 people. We've been in Christiansburg since 1975, and you can go to the local middle school, high school, and they don't know we exist. So, and we've been performing energy efficiency for 47 years in our local community. And so I think that, you know, awareness is a big thing. We've, I've been in workforce development meetings with high school counselors, and I've offered to go visit their classes. And they said, if you come to my class, you're 5 years too late. 5 years too late. I think that we are, as an industry, we're thinking about recruiting people that have been through high school or about to go to college. We need to be talking to sixth graders. We need to be talking to them and educating them about what we do. And I was thinking about this on the way in and thinking of an analogy. Like when I grew up, I played with hammers and tools and fixed my own bike and tinkered with it and whatever. This is what the kids are playing with right now. And so they want these jobs. I mean, we're seeing that shift. My daughter, iPad, everything in computer. I'm like, hey, why don't you come into the garden and use a shovel? I'm like, yeah, it's not for me. But I grew up digging ditches and using tools and learning the value of that kind of work. this is a hands-on industry, and we're facing just a difference in culture right now that we have got to combat at a younger level and not wait till they are in senior sem of high school, because they've already decided where they're headed by that time. So.
I'm actually gonna piggyback on that as a parent of an eighth grader in public school. We have in all of the meetings and more meetings that we did to gather information for our initiative. I talked to the head of the Henrico County Center for Technical Career and Education. And he said, and we've heard this echoed with Department of Energy and you, that eighth grade is when kids really decide what they want to be when they grow up. That there are, with the high school system is moving, a lot of high school systems are moving to a more specialty center model that isn't as dependent on your zip code, which has a lot of great opportunities as far as equity, but also has a lot of drawbacks because, you know, my eighth grader is deciding whether or not she wants to go to early college or if she wants to go to the humanities academy, you know, and she's 13. If you're talking to a 17-year-old, they're already in their specialty center. They've already made a series of decisions that put them not on an immutable path, but on a path that is harder to change than it was.
I agree with everything y'all just said. I think it's brilliant. From the contractor side, I think the biggest barriers that we see are basic skills that are consistent from a trained person. The variation and when we interview people that have come out of a training program, their perception of what the job is compared to what the job really is typically have very big misalignments, which kind of speaks back to a hybrid training model so that people can decide, you know what, this sounded great, but I sure am glad I didn't spend 2 years on a certificate because I'm not ever going to be an addict person. And I think that's the biggest barrier we see is which speaks what you are saying, the perception of it, the acknowledgement of what that actually looks like versus, you know, what it is.
I agree. Education and outreach is huge. This is one of the reasons DCSU is in elementary schools doing fairs, passing out home energy kits to take home to their parents. We show up at the community events, street fairs, and so on. But when we come down to the individual who is now in our program, has some awareness of green career opportunities, working with the individual can sometimes be a challenge. And you have to stand ready and have a coalition of community partners, community-based organizations that you can reach out and touch for whatever the need is for that individual. We've seen some transformative things happen with the individuals who participated in our program and at our workforce development graduations. We often have tears going on with some of the testimonies that come from the participants. We just graduated a class mid-September, and so we're really proud of them. And all but two chose to move forward with their mentor. One just made other choices in life, and the other decided to go to graduate school. But it is a high-touch program, and I would say build a coalition, building a coalition with partners who can help you.
All right, so now moving to the good side, being positive. What's the largest source of opportunity you see now? I'm going to start with you.
The trades are great and they get paid. That's the bottom line. If you are a person that doesn't enjoy being in the same place every day, you know, being in the office in front of a screen, and you're willing to put some work in, there is such a great thirst in the industry for that driven, hungry individual. And that will always rise very quickly in companies and opportunities. I don't know what the exact data is, and everybody has heard different things, but the closest that sounds about right to me is for every 4 people retiring from the trades, there's 1 person coming in. So the opportunities are just outrageous. You know, it's just great. And, you know, the sky's the limit if we can get people interested in using their hands again. You can raise a family on it. You can retire on it. You can be very fulfilled from it. The work we do now in the income qualified world, our people sleep really good at night because they're helping grandma on her electric bill, and they're helping a disadvantaged family in Appalachia save $80 a month on their energy costs. And that fulfillment is real. And you get that all the way through. On the retail side, you show up and you see somebody, it's hot, the kids are sweaty, you know, the parents have had a bad day, and when you leave, they're just tying your cape on tighter because the air's blowing hot or cold, and they think you're the best thing since sliced bread. So from the income and the fulfillment side, it's just massive, and it's been very good to be in my family, and I'd love to see more and more people get to experience that.
I think we have a greater opportunity to showcase our success stories. Lots of success stories right around the cigar community. For example, we worked on a project along with many other partners on a faith-based community center in a very dense area in the district. They had some cool features in the building. For example, the commercial kitchen that is used to cook food for the unhoused populations and others. And a commercial kitchen with all the efficiency measures, including induction stoves. So we have an opportunity to share those successes and make them very public to our neighbors, so they too could become interested and want to be a part of it.
I think since I started, probably the biggest positive is that the salaries in the energy efficiency world have grown more competitive to the world around us. And back 10, 15 years ago when I got into this, they were a whole lot less. There weren't as many jobs, but I think because there now are more jobs, the salaries have come up, so it's a little bit more competitive. It's a little more enticing. And on the education side, you're talking about fulfillment. I think that's the other thing that we really need to get out there, because the generations coming up behind us, they're not always interested in the money and everything else. They're more interested in, is this really going to make an impact? And so we have to get that message out as well, because that's really appealing to folks who stay in this industry. Once they get in, they'll stay crawling under a house for 40 years. And you're like, why? And they're like, for that same reason, you know, that Michael pointed out, because when I get out of that hot, dirty attic or crawl space or whatever, I see the impact that I'm making, and that made my day. And so I think we have to advertise that as well, and make that in a sense sexy, you know, just like working any other job. We have to advertise that piece of it and attract that younger crowd. Yep.
You'll steal my word, but I think that green energy is sexy. And the current students, they come home and they talk about that from school. They're interested in sustainability and they care about that. And so when we talk about capturing hearts and minds at a younger age, I think that that's starting to happen, and the rest of us need to get on board. And I also think that we're seeing a very positive trend towards favorability towards the trades. There's a lot of emphasis on right now, and that's going to have a trickle down effect for everybody who works in building and construction trades and ship repair and shipbuilding. And so I think that we're going to benefit from all of the positive press that's coming from state and national government. Just a little plug on recruitment again. We're talking about younger generation summer camps, local colleges and libraries and things like that are a great opportunity. Think about what's in the region and put together a camp and collaborate with somebody to deliver it, because hands-on training, those kids are going to get exposed when they're, 7, 8, 9, 10, get excited about it in the future.
Thank you.
So as I mentioned in my presentation, kind of piggybacking off of opportunities, we're getting a fire hose of funding from the federal government. And that is on top of the existing federal weatherization money and the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative WDR money and the already allocated state energy office money. So the funds are there, or they will be. However, as we've learned in the past, how you do it is much more important than what you're doing. So if you have all these millions of dollars in a magic wand, what is the best case, perfect world scenario for success here? Crystal, you can start.
I think you mentioned this earlier, just kind of looking across the board and identifying where the gaps are. For example, at TCSU, we've been given a green light to move forward with expanding our affordable housing electrification program, and that's called the Repeat Funds. And so we can ask to offer more training in for heat pump installation. So finding those contractors that need additional training, that need additional certification, that's one area that focus for additional success.
I would think that a hybrid training model and then a new set of industry recognized certifications. The NAEPs, the MasterCards, the Journeyman's cards, the EPA cards, that stuff is not real valuable to the first year, second year tradesperson. They're very valuable deeper into your career, but at the beginning, they're just not what we need to be aiming at. And I think that a separate entity that drives and guides that would be really helpful. So when you're done training somebody and they are adopted by me, right? I take them on, they've been a great mentee, it's a good fit. As a smaller business, well, as many small businesses are, they're not going to have the capacity or even necessarily the skill set to drive that hungry person's career. So a separate, whether it's a registered apprenticeship program, some third party that would then say, hey, all these certifications, we're the clearinghouse for them. We're going to determine, did they pass the test and check the box? The contractors are not going to be able to do that on a consistent, repeatable basis. You'll get some that kill it, and then some people just will get a very different experience. And a third party, I think, could help drive that. And let people that were hungry and wanted to continue in their career have somewhere where they could look and see this step leads to that step leads to the next step.
What's the next? I'll give it to Dr. Hanson.
So my professional exactly what we need to be doing with our local community college or other education provider in the workforce together. Very meaningful. So you come into my office and say, I need a program to train my staff to do X, Y, Z. We're going to figure out who can teach them that, whether it's an nationally recognized credential that can validate they did in fact learn those skills. And we can put that training in a matter of weeks if all the pieces fall into place properly. Career pathways, that should be defined. We talked about that at the beginning. If we can define a career pathway for someone and your local education provider is delivering each piece of that pathway, then it's easy to start somebody. And the process, we talk about opportunities, the collaboration is really key. I can recruit with the knowledge that anyone who completes step A is immediately eligible for employment with your organization, and you're going to send it back to step B, and they're going to go back and be better and come back and complete step C. If we know we can build that pathway so that they get better and better every year, and if you say hybrid's the best way to go, then hybrid's the way we're going to go. We will build an online program for the pieces that are more tedious, background oriented, and then we're going to bring them in the classroom. And I say classroom when I mean a training lab where they get hands-on experience. So creating those programs, we could do that. There's so much flexibility in the way we do training. The key is if somebody applies for a job with you and you like them and you think, you know what, you've got a lot of potential, but you've got zero knowledge and skills, encourage them to go to the program that you've partnered with and say, hey, if you go get this training, come back to me and I will guarantee you a job. Or if you have an interview and you don't have a feeling, say, you know what, you don't have the skills we're looking for right now, but if you could qualify, come back and the needs will go from there. So create that flow. It's not just the college's job to recruit people, train them, and send them to you. You need to reverse that pattern and send people to us when they come in your door. They're already interested. So that's a great opportunity to just create a constant cycle. And then the skilling up keeps happening with the college as well.
You too.
Is it okay if I don't have anything? Because like this,
We can go to the next question.
this is a really tricky one, but I was just listening to the different perspectives and just thinking back through my years going through school, what I see here in Virginia, what we don't have, and there is that gap in apprenticeship. Just I'm thinking through like even at CHP, when I was in high school, I went and worked in whatever. I worked on a farm. I did all kinds of stuff. I used power tools. Nobody had any rules and regulations. I didn't have to wear 6 helmets and pads and everything else. But now, like if I've got a 16-year-old that is interested in weatherization, they want to come work for us in the summertime. Well, yeah, they can come work for you as long as they don't touch this. And I'm like, oh, so they can go work in the office and learn admin. And then they want to go be an admin after they get out of high school or want to go to college and do stuff. So we need to break down that barrier somehow. Spend that money on breaking down these barriers, in my opinion, because there's plenty of money in our world. Now it's different in your all's worlds, but in weatherization, once they come to work for that agency, the agency is paying them to come to us. So we're in a little bit different boat, I guess. But when they work in a position through high school, they're more likely going to go into that field. When I worked in high school, I worked at a restaurant. I wanted to be a cook. I wanted to be a chef. Well, because that's what I knew. That's what I was working at. I soon learned I didn't want to be a chef, because that was too hot. That's hotter than an attic. I'd rather be in an attic. But it's that mentality, and I think we were talking about this once before, one of our other meetings, and I'm like, I give a 16-year-old a license to drive a 2,000-pound missile down 81 at 75 miles an hour while texting their mom, but they're not allowed to use a circular saw because they might nick their finger. And I'm going, where are we? Like we need to figure out how we break down, spend some money, create some apprenticeship programs and opportunities, but we've got to let these kids, we say kids, they're 16, they're driving, they're managing themselves in many ways. We can train them how to use a saw. We can train them how to drive a car. We can train them how to use a saw. We can train them how to weld. I mean, when I was in high school, and this is where I think the money should go, is develop these vocational add-ons to these schools. Because when I was in high school, you could go to the college track, or in the afternoon, you could go to Voc Tech and learn welding. At 16 years old, my brother's learning welding. Now that's pretty dangerous. So I know we can do it. We just have to get back to it. I think that's what it boils down to.
Awesome. All right, I think we've got time for, actually, I don't think I have time for any more of my questions, but we've got about 15 minutes for yours. So if any of you have questions, please raise your hand and I'm going to come run around with the microphone.
Where's the microphone?
That's right. I appreciate all the perspectives all shared. My name is Sierra Club, and I work with local communities too.
To introduce weatherization. So, hi.
Hey.
Be you first, but this is.
They turn that one on.
And I'm glad.
It'll work now. I turned this one off. That's what it was
I'm
doing.
meeting with the Charleston County leadership for the high school, middle school, and the community
In order to start a vocational training program, to couple energy efficiency and solar workforce, starting with the 12th and 11th graders there. I appreciate that each of you mentioned different ways to start earlier. And, working with rural communities, a lot of them are under-resourced. I was wondering any tips or suggestions for alleviating those lack of capacity and getting more vocational programs in touch with for the past. So the issue of actually implementing our vocational program that we created is not having touch points within this system or the counselors to really get enough children to do.
Again, on the ground. Who wants to answer that?
That's a tough one.
It is.
So let me clarify, you're looking for how you can create vocational programs. You don't have financial resources to do that.
More so, there's one, of the allowed capacity for, students. For example, we targeted the 11 and 12th graders for the
One of the things. Talking with your regional, so let's just say we'll use HVAC and talk about that. If you have an HVAC employer. Working with the HVAC industry in designing sort of vague information sets, and I see information sets. Think about activities. One thing that we've seen is an organization will design, think about the as what else students have to do as school. And some of the activities do can be about kids. So if there's sort of less related to reading and comprehension, then embed a story. Create resources that use fine instructor to go ahead and meet their deliverables, and then create for your counselors simple fact sheets and talk about the money and how little time it takes to get there and how you can do it locally and quickly. And so those fact sheets, so the counselor doesn't have to have knowledge, but they have enough awareness to this information that the industry creates to give them a handout. And so your community partners can be given those resources that are made available to students. Even if the school itself can't scale up to deliver it, they can provide awareness and tools like that. Thank you.
Can I mention something? Superheat, subcool, delta T, and static in all middle school classes. I think that's excellent. When you just as you were mentioning, I was kind of rolling through my head, and I'm thinking about in what we do, how many things we do that just have words like that nobody knows what they mean, but the math and the mechanics behind it are really basic middle school level stuff. What we do is not rocket science. It's just not. So yeah, so much of what is done, at least in our trade and certainly in electrical as well, could be taught at a middle school level and blended into a math class. BTUs and watts and those basic terms could be brought in and understood by, a lot of it by elementary school students. It's just not that complex, but it's just new words and a different way to look at math. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that, because when I'm trying to teach my daughter math, she's 12. She's like, you ain't gonna need this. What are you gonna need this for? And I'm like trying to come up with examples, even just like going grocery shopping, when she was 5, it was great because it'd be like, so you got $10, and this costs like $6. How much are you gonna give me, or how much I'll give you back? And she would always come up short. I would make lots of money. And I'd be like, this is why you gotta know math. You have to be able to like extrapolate in your head very quickly. Is this a good deal or not a good deal? But there are other higher levels of math that, yeah, we could totally bring in, like how does this apply to nursing? If you're doing X, Y, and Z, and you've got to figure out milliliters and, and whatever. So I think we need more examples, in the school system of how is this applicable? Because how many of our kids have always said, I'm never going to use this. It's like, yeah, you are. You just don't see it yet. So.
Crystal, you want to?
I can't. I was thinking, I'm sorry, I was thinking, I've been out of the K-12 space for a while, but I was K-12 lead during my days at the U.S. Department of Energy. One of the tidbits that came from school districts across the country was identifying the energy champion in that school district or in that school. That may come from a teacher or another resource in the school. They just have a first action for efficiency and topics around climate change and so on. So just to identify who that energy champion would be to help you communicate and encourage. And that's
Elected. All kinds of electives.
yeah.
An easy one this time.
See, if it's working, hey. Crystal, you mentioned, that you had some externs who didn't end up getting hired by the mentors because they decided they want to go back to school or take a different job. So what all was included in that 15% that isn't the direct hiring? And do you have any idea what the overall success rate is of the program?
Thank you. So that 15% does include, going back to graduate school, taking a job with another employer, and then there are those who just challenged by the environment, by life circumstances. Those things we have to acknowledge, and we usually pair with community-based organizations to help them work through those types of issues.
This gentleman, and then on the side.
Just a side note, 85% placement, really strong.
Yeah, that's huge.
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Rick Miller with TRC, and this is really fun because for 40 years I've been having this discussion, so it's great with this great topic today. It seems like there's all the things you guys all talk about. Great, appreciate all of it. It's all great news, and some of the things like first graders and second graders kind of brought up my two kids. Did all kind of projects on sustainability and green and all those other things. Working with my grandkids now. But there's that big gap between there and getting out of high school and then making a career choice, and that's been pushed all along through there. Can't tell you how many times I've heard the bachelor degree is now the high school. You have to get a bachelor degree, which I don't agree with, because so many people aren't good with academic regular schooling, and the technical side is a much better way to go. So there's a big gap between those first grade and fifth grade, and then going to the high school and college that they're talking about as far as the training. And when you start looking at other countries and how they're doing it, and we're missing the boat because you look at where kids are starting at 6 years old, and when they get out of high school, we fall way off as far as the country goes, as far as education goes. How are we going to fix that gap? Too many topics right now. But you look at Germany, great example where the community, Mike, your example, where Mercedes goes into middle schools and helps the people that are going to go to tech school start setting up a training program for those guys on that track and how to train those examples and the math class. I mean, how can I train them to be a tech when they're 18 years old when they graduate high school? And so there has to be a lot more community and a lot more industry involvement with that tech side. So you can be a new technology comes out 6 months later, that should be in those schools teaching that stuff. So you have a readiness course when they come 18 years old. They don't have to go into the colleges like that. So it's how do you get that involvement so that you can do it? We're not going to solve this here, but I'm just saying that's the challenge with all the things you understand. We're starting way too late, 11th, 12th grade. It's way too late in college if you're going to get the people in the sustainability piece. And then one last comment. One thing that I don't know if everybody knows about this, is the military kind of like, I'm sorry, Driscoll, you as far as the support and the free money. People getting out of the military, they can go to an internship program for the last 3 months, and even up to 6 months, where they get their military pay, and they'll come to you for an internship and work for free while they're getting paid by the military to learn their trade, and you don't have to offer them a job. Great opportunity.
It's good up there.
Beyond all sides.
Great program, you get people that are, a lot of them training, that they go and take the, get great meetings.
Any stuff? You want to walk me around.
No, I'm good.
All right,
Okay.
over.
Wait.
Thanks for your time, everybody. Trey Biasioli, City of Charlottesville. This is my question about the existing workforce and working with the existing trades. So there's a lot of money coming out for equipment installs through the IRA and other federal sources. And a lot of localities here in Virginia are interested in trying to figure out how to, they recognize the critical role of partnering with those trades and going ahead and delivering those benefits to members. So I wanted to know if you had any thoughts about how to go ahead and create effective partnerships with the traders in our communities to make it worth their while, saving these programs and offer these savings opportunities to the local members.
This was just talking to the end of it. Yeah.
So we do partner with our partners, small businesses, DSOBD, strictly access those contractors and people that may be interested in participating with the involvement in Ireland. So that's one area where we can live also in feedback. We're setting up operations of schedules. For example, if you tested on courses for weekends, but something, it's just a time weekends participating trainings and what exams and so we give them alternative schedules to support them. That's the matter. But this absolutely.
Sure. So in terms of delivering the IRA benefits, a lot of the gatekeepers are occupied with the HVAC installers, plumbers who are helping the homeowners think about, oh, am I going to replace this furnace with a heat pump, for example? How do we go ahead and make sure that the contractors are aware of these benefits and make any sort of partnerships with them worthwhile so that they're effective sales people who are any of these technologies that they're sort of funding?
I got you. I think I can. So in the retail world of HVAC, customer facing B2C, I was the guy in the van in 2007, 2009 timeframe where there was a lot of subsidies for basic retail replacements. And I think that's just going to get its own pull through. The money's just going to be there. The subsidies are going to be there. The business owners are going to see, hey, I get that it's easier to sell heat pumps and gas furnaces now because they're subsidizing heat pumps over gas furnaces. I think that's probably going to fix itself to a large point. You're certainly going to have a number of contractors out there that, oil is the best thing ever and you're never going to tell me any different. And you're just not going to tell that guy different. And he's probably going to give some people bad advice and there might not be anything you can do about that. But I based on what happened last time with a ton of money came through, I think a lot of that's going to fix itself. The client education will be there and they'll be like, hey, heat pumps subsidized real well. And I think that's going to fix itself to a large extent. Oh, well. Oh, it'll be out. It's just good. The manufacturers are pushing it. It's coming out. Yeah.
You all have a ton of experience. Just curious what your thoughts would be on something like a free ride along with proclamation based on economic training. We're struggling to get enough creative people hired. Maybe for money, what are your thoughts on a free kind of this helper program? You had a vision of the five. And it's still why it's not on.
I think it's a very viable solution. It is clear understanding between the employer and the pre-apprentice that this is your starting point, and a little bit of clarity on timelines and stepping stones, I guess I should say, that if they come to the door and the starting wage for pre-apprentice is probably low because they're doing all the work and they're coming in without skills, they need to be able to see very clearly that if they are on the job this many weeks, months, and they achieve these steps, they are credential or they complete tasks certain number of times successfully, or those types of things, or they enroll in your training program. Here's your first month, and then a few months later, here's your second month for achieving these milestones. And so, pre-apprenticeship is a great way to get someone in the door and start training them. But you have to give them a very clear vision, because without that, all they'll see is I'm getting $15 an hour and that term not working really this hard. And if they can say, but I'm only going to have to work 3 months and learn these things and improve my competency before you find me another job. And then by the end of the year, whatever those financial goals might be, that's going to create success in the program. And then the training you work with your local schools to develop further training that you send it back on growth within your company and produce success.
I was just thinking of a few experiences, but I mean, what you're experiencing, quite honestly, is what we're all experiencing. And I think that's probably just needs to be aired out. There's no magic bullet to this, no golden ticket. The workforce is very competitive. We are competing with Target and Chick-fil-A, and I was, went to Kroger's the other day, and there's like so many shoppers now that are shopping for other people. Maybe we should stop being lazy, and they'll lose their jobs, and then they can come in, work in energy efficiency. I don't know. But I mean, there's so much opportunity out there since COVID. And it is very tricky, and we have to also think about how competitive we are and what can we offer besides money, because money isn't always the answer. We've done some changing in our schedules, in our company. Instead of working 5/8, we work 4/10s. That's one less day for daycare. That's one less drive into work. If you're driving on 81, that's, an extra chance that you might live the next month, whatever it is. But I mean, we have to look at every little thing, and so when folks have turned me down for jobs, I go back and ask them why. It isn't always money. There are other factors. And I think that's that feedback loop that we have to be willing to seek too, as employers, so that we can say, all right, I've been doing this way for 30 years, but what if I worked 4/10s? What does that really do to my business? What does that do to make me more competitive? Or, in our field of training, we're typically done, if we're training in-house locally, we're done by noon on Fridays. So the trainers get the afternoon off. Instead of working till 4 o'clock, I give them those extra few hours back of their week. They get an extra half a day, because on other weeks they're traveling and they're out of town. They're leaving on Sunday and coming back late Friday night. But that extra little bit that I'm giving back changed the morale, and it helps. And it's not always at throwing more money at the situation. It's sometimes, what are our processes? How can we be more appealing in other ways? I think is what it boils down to. And it's just educating, the value in so many ways. Like the Kroger example, I went through Kroger's and recently, and you get cash back, if you use your credit card and like, oh, I need a 20. Well, they started charging like 50 cents now for that. And I'm like, what? Nobody else is charging. And this kid was like, oh, it's just 50 cents. It's no big deal. You don't have to. What can you buy for 50 cents? And I'm like, you don't have kids or a car or a house, do you? He's like, nah, I don't care about money. And I'm like, wow, must be nice, but it's eye-opening because that generation is in a different mode and they're looking for different things. And so it just got me thinking like, yeah, what do they really want then if they don't want money?
Flexibility.
Flexibility. Yeah. You get that in. I get this.
Wow, I got a big one. So I love the idea of a pre-apprentice program, and I think that would help and I talk a lot about the small contractor because that's who's out there doing the hiring. You're going to have your big players. They've got their training programs, they got their workforce development, but the vast majority of people that we want to serve through the future workforce development are not people that have that capacity to really engage in a robust way. There's just no bandwidth. The owner's still washing the truck on Saturday. So the idea of a pre-apprentice, especially if it is somebody that maybe is old enough to drive a missile down 81, and we can get to a place to where that person is allowed to touch a screwdriver or hold a voltmeter without it, being a crime, is huge, because you could bring that person in a part-time kind of thing at a very low cost or almost free to the contractor. And then that gives that person the ability to say, hey, I am interested in this, or I sure am glad I rode in the van with Quick AC for a few weeks, because that is not my career path. And now I didn't waste time in a training program or spend money or take away from what my real future may be. So I like everything about that, but I think the key is get them in young, get them in cheap to the contractor, and make sure they're allowed to touch a circular saw.
Yeah, one last question.
My question is actually for Mike, so just a short answer. You've said a couple times during your talk about for you, new technicians that go to you, that just really having the training certificates could you clarify it's really your mind there on the job? Because that means and then further to follow that. What do you think about
Absolutely. So with the on-the-job training piece, the way I would see that working in my head is, say you spent 1 day a week or 2 days a week in the classroom, and the other, if you're working a 4-day week like we do, the other days out in the field with a for-profit company or a .org doing the actual field-based work. And with all of this money coming in for training and workforce development, I would love to see some of that go to subsidize that hands-on stuff. Again, I'm thinking about the smaller contractors that are going to do the vast majority of this hiring. The capacity for them to absorb people that are trying to decide whether this is their future or not is painful. So anything that could be subsidized and lower that risk, because everybody that thinks they want to do HVAC or plumbing or electrical doesn't. Right? They're going to do it for a little while and they're going to realize maybe this isn't for me. So anything to help mitigate that risk is huge. And the subsidizing that would be incredibly helpful and effective in my opinion.
I think I think we need to put a lot less money into white collar meetings about workforce development. And because of this, you made the point that these are small businesses. They struggle day to day. They can't be business. So if we are rich enough to have a white collar meeting, we are rich enough as a society to pay people to go out and you're right.
Very helpful. With that, it looks like we're going to get our